Irashaimase! Hello and welcome to Fitaurus Kitchen. I'm your host, Chef Fitaurus. It's time once again for Shoot 'em Up Saturday, and on the menu this Saturday we have Pop'n TwinBee, the 1993 Konami Shoot 'em Up classic for the Super Nintendo. What kind of taste will it have? Let's get cooking and find out. Technically the sixth game in the series, Pop'n TwinBee is the direct follow-up of Detana TwinBee that originally released in the arcades. Pop'n TwinBee only released on the Super Nintendo. It released on the Super Famicom in Japan in early 1993, and then later in the year released on the Super Nintendo in Europe. It never did get a North American release, which is a little disappointing as this is a really great shoot 'em up. Let's take a moment to look at the ingredients. So we're starting off with the base, or the genre of the game. So Pop'n TwinBee is your standard vertical scrolling shoot 'em up with the usual movement and basic attacks that come with the genre, but it's also got a heavy side of shoot 'em up. Really, there aren't very many other games, especially for the Super Nintendo, that I feel fit the shoot 'em up genre better than this one. In addition to your main attack, we have some spices added in that adds a more unique flavor to Pop'n TwinBee. So the bombs make a return from the previous TwinBee games. In TwinBee, there are several enemies on the ground, but you need to use your bombs to hit them. In previous games, you could potentially lose your arms, which you wouldn't be allowed to go and throw the bombs, but fortunately that's not the case in Pop'n TwinBee. Then we have our punch, which is admittedly bound to the same button as the bombs, but it works in an interesting way. So if you hold that down, you charge up a punch. You can go and release that for a medium or a strong attack, which is very, very short range, but does deal a heavy amount of damage. And last, we have the Chibi Attack. When you release the Chibi Attack, your ship will swell, and then all these little mini TwinBees or WinBees will go flying around the screen, dealing all sorts of great damage. Our next ingredient is the options, or minis. At the beginning of the game, you'll have the option of selecting between 3 different formations for your minis. There's the follow formation, which the minis will just follow your ship around, and keep in mind the TwinBee and the WinBee formations do function a little bit differently. Then we have the Guru Guru, or surround formation, where the options spin around you, shooting forward for the TwinBee and shooting outward from the WinBee. And last but not least, we have the Guru Guru, or not the Guru Guru. And last but not least, we have the Nobi Nobi, or the Engulf formation. So this formation starts out lined up next to the TwinBee or the WinBee, but as you continue to fire, they move away from the ship and will engulf the screen in a rectangular pattern. Depending on your position, they'll move with them as well. It's a great formation for screen coverage and taking care of a lot of enemies, though it can make things really busy and sometimes hard to go and tell what the heck is even going on. Still, it's a really fun formation to use. The bell power-ups, a TwinBee staple, make a return in Pop'n TwinBee. As with other TwinBee games, when you shoot clouds, they'll release bells. There are also enemies that, when destroyed, will also release bells. Those bells can be collected in their bronze state for points ranging from 500 to 10,000 as long as you don't let any fall off the bottom of the screen. But if you continue to shoot them, they'll change colors, and those colored bells are your power-ups. First, we've got the blue bell, which gives us a speed up. Collect enough of them, and the next blue bell you'll get will be a speed downgrade, dropping you all the way to base speed. Next, we've got the green bell. These are your minis. You can collect up to 4 of them and have 4 on screen at any given time. This includes co-op, so there is that limit. But once you have 4 minis, any mini green bells you collect beyond that bank against future hits so you don't lose minis when you get hit. Then we have the silver bell, and this will upgrade your shot to the powerful cannon shot. After that, there's the purple bell, which will give you the useful 3-way. Next we have the pink bell, which will give you a shield. The shield will protect you from 4 hits, and you can see the strength of the shield by the color, ranging from blue to green, green to orange, orange to red, and finally, well, non-existent. And lastly, we have the flashing bell, which will give you an additional Chibi Attack. And finally, we have the 2-player mode. And to me, this is the way that Pop'n TwinBee is meant to be played. It's 2-player simultaneous, so you're both going and working together at the same time, but there's just some new actions that are added in that help solidify that this is the way they want you to go and play the game, as you don't have these abilities any other time. You can transfer the enemy between one player to the other, equaling out your life if one player happens to be low on health. You also have a new attack, the throw attack, where you literally grab your partner, swing them around you, and throw them around the screen to deal damage to enemies. It's even slightly homing, so it's really neat, and they're invulnerable during the whole thing, so they'll be okay after all's said and done. If you have the ability to play Pop'n TwinBee with a partner, I would really recommend doing so. It's a great experience. With all those ingredients added together, we get Pop'n TwinBee, a great entry in the TwinBee series. So there is actually a story to the game itself as well. We play the characters Light and Pastel, who pilot the TwinBee and WinBee respectively. Where at the beginning of the game, in the first stage, you rescue a girl named Madoka. She's the daughter of Dr. Marduk, who was a benevolent scientist and then hit his head and went insane. So now he's trying to take over the world with the use of the Acorn Army, which are those cute little enemies that you've seen throughout the various bits of video so far. So the game itself does progress over a total of 7 stages, adding some decent length, although that is admittedly one of the issues that the game itself has. I'll get to that in just a second. Here we're actually playing through the second stage. This one's one of my favorites. I just like the whole underwater aspect, and really all the stages have all these great enemies that are themed to the stage themselves. You've got some of the bizarre tropes that you have in the TwinBee series. There's all these enemies based on food, but in this one you've got a lot of aquatic enemies. There's that great water ripple effect where having to dodge fish in this section. It's really well themed, and that's something that you can really appreciate in a shoot 'em up like this that has different locations and is just generally more bizarre than your standard shoot 'em up. Also, I love the boss of this stage, and this is one I really want to go and show. So this boss itself starts out almost, best word I can think of it is incorporeal. It's just an after image with just 2 glowing eyes moving back and forth, firing bubbles at us. As we shoot it, though, we'll move on to its second phase. And the thing that I like so much about this boss is it goes and reminds me of the 3rd stage boss from Axlay. So in that stage, it's also one of the vertical scrollers from Axlay where you're flying above the city at night. And the boss itself starts out kind of incorporeal. It goes through all these forms and goes and fades in. And some of the attacks and just the way this boss goes and looks reminds me so strongly of that boss that I feel they were totally inspired by that, and that's what they were going for with this particular boss fight. Then, once we defeat the boss, which should just be in a couple more shots, we get showered in bells. Great to go and pick up any power-ups if you were missing anything after the fight. Although, I think I picked up the wrong kind of shot. Between each stage, you do get a cute little cutscene, either of the characters, Light or Pastel, TwinBee, WinBee, and Madoka. Jumping past that, as we begin stage 3, I'll go a little bit over my thoughts of it. So minus flavors, I don't like the fact that you can lose your options just for taking hits. So you have a life bar system, which is great, but each time you take a hit on your life bar, if you don't have a shield, you risk losing one of your options. That can be mitigated, of course, as I mentioned, by picking up additional greens once you've passed the max, but it's still frustrating to go and lose your power just for taking a hit. And also, when it comes to taking hits, you'll be doing that really frequently. The TwinBee and the WinBee have huge hitboxes, and sometimes the enemy hitboxes themselves are abnormally large as well. You don't think you're that close to them, but you still hit them. And then there's stage length. Stage 4 in particular, I feel really overstays its welcome. It's just a little bit too long, and with some of the frustrating elements that are present in that one, the propellers, if you've played the game, you probably know what I'm talking about, just makes it unwelcome. But the plus flavors, we've got these super bright, colorful stages and sprites that really make the game feel vibrant and alive, with every stage having tons of unique enemies. It's a real treat to play just to go and see what you'll be fighting against in every new stage. And then there's just that fun nature to the game itself. The TwinBee games are never ones that go and take themselves seriously, so if you're looking for just a really enjoyable cute-em-up, this is one that I can highly recommend. So Chef Fitaurus will totally rate this as a sweet dessert dish that will keep you coming back for more, both the series and this game itself. Alright, that'll just about wrap it up for this week's episode of Shoot 'em Up Saturday. I hope you enjoy my attempt at a new format. And as always, I look forward to going and seeing you again next week.